Should I stop? No. If you look at this, you will find that in the methods of science, we have tried to address the famous Aristotelian question, what is the method of science which elicited two rival responses from the 17th century to the 19th century? In these 300 years, 3 centuries, you will find that that those two rival responses in the form of inductivism on the one hand and hypothesism on the other, we have already discussed how inductivism is based on empiricism and empiricism is based on experience, whereas hypothesism is based on rationalism and rationalism is based on reason. And that's how we have discussed how experience and reason became the two parameters through which we have been producing knowledge. That's extremely important. And then we have discussed positivism, we have discussed Popper, we have discussed Kuhn, we have discussed Feyerabend. And then we have moved on to ethos of science, Mertonian ethos of science in the form of kudos, communism, universalism, disinterestedness, and organized skepticism. And then we have discussed inequalities in science in terms of rewards and recognitions. The kind of inequalities which persist in the domain of science. And when I said ethos of science, I mean effectively toned complex of values and norms, which is held to be binding on the practitioner of science. And these ethos are expressed in terms of prescriptions, proscriptions, preferences, and permissions. And you will find that we have come to a point that in the 21st century that there are certain counter norms, and these counter norms we'll discuss a little while later. Okay, when we're discussing how scientific knowledge in India has turned out to be an intellectual property, how there is a transition from science being a public resource and to science being an intellectual property. If you look at this, then we have also discussed social shaping of technology, political shaping of technology, economic shaping of technology, military shaping of technology. In the context of information society, we have discussed David Lyon, Alvin Toffler, Manuel Castells, Christian Kumar, and so on, Daniel Bell, of course. And then we have discussed how in the world of patenting, how we have changed our stance. I mean, how scientific practices are undergoing transition. If you look at Indian Patents Act, which was subject to only process patents, I mean, the first Indian Patents Act was formulated in 1970, and the 1970 Indian Patents Act was subject to only processes. In other words, one could arrive at the same product by using different processes. And in 1995, India became signatory to the World Trade Organization WTO agreements, as a consequence of which, from the 1st of January 2005, India entered the product patent regime. Now we cannot, I mean, now both processes and products, I mean, now the patent regulations that we are confronted with are subject to both processes as well as products. And in this sense, when you look at this, the ethos that we, or the norms, institutional imperatives that we had started with, that kudos, communism, communism, universalism, disinterestedness, and organized skepticism. Now we are, I mean, these ethos are getting challenged. Institutional imperatives are getting challenged. Science is no longer a public resource. Science is no longer a curiosity-driven research. Rather, it has become a part of contract obligations. It has become a part of intellectual property. Communism, perhaps, is no longer an ethos of science. Rather, private ownership over scientific knowledge has become a new institutional. Okay. Similarly, particularly in contradistinction with universalism, we have come to the point of particularism. In the case of disinterestedness, we are witnessing interests and ideologies which govern govern scientific pursuits today. And in the case of organized skepticism, we tend to look at organized dogmatism. Okay, what is organized skepticism? I mean, I tend to temporarily suspend or postpone my judgment unless and until all facts are at hand. But as a part of organized dogmatism, I tend to arrive at a judgment or tend to arrive at a conclusion immediately. And then in the context of this kind of these changes at the realm of public policy, science policy, and so on, you will find that our scientific practices are also undergoing changes. And in this context, we have discussed science policies in India. Though perhaps India was the first country in the world to formulate its science policy. The first scientific policy resolution was formulated by the government of India in 1958 under the leadership of Nehru. There was so much of emphasis on scientific temper and so on, building scientific institutions. And in these 75 years, what we are witnessing, that perhaps there is a huge hiatus between building scientific temper on the one hand and building scientific institutions on the other. And that gap must be understood, why it has happened, why it has been happening for quite a long period of time. And then India wanted to make a shift in its focus from science to technology, because technology was thought of applied science and so on. And we all have discussed that you just cannot say that it is only application or something, but application at a very rudimentary level that we have discussed. Okay. In fact, technology also has changed the direction of scientific of basic science. Okay. And then what we have discussed, once India wanted to leapfrog from science to technology, in 2003, India wanted to integrate science and technology. Okay. And then we very often come across certain terms like technoscience and so on. Of course, that's different. But if you look at the way India wanted to integrate science and technology in 2003 in the form of science and technology policy, and as India entered the product patent regime in 2005, and the whole world of IPR, intellectual property rights regime, innovation and something, these parameters, they changed for India in the Indian context. And if you cannot innovate, then you cannot get your products patented. And such was the demand, such was the situation that called for the formulation of science, technology and innovation policy in 2013. And in 2019, 2020, the government of India formulated the new science, technology and innovation policy, which and all these scientific policies documents, they're extremely important to make sense of, to understand the dynamics of the development of science and technology on the one hand, and the development of our economic, culture and polity on the other. That's how we have ended the course. In a week or two, you're going to complete the course. I'm sure all of you will appear in the test. If you face any problem, you can raise the questions on the portal. Our team will respond to those questions. I'm sure all of you are very bright students. You people will do well, not simply in the examination, but also in life. All the best. Thank you very much. Bye. Bas.